The context of the whole book of Revelation, especially our chapter we're looking at, is God is writing to a bunch of people living in a hard place to live, and he's telling them how to live for God in an ever-darkening world. And what we're going to learn here is you live for God connected. That's the only way that you make it, and it's going to be fun studying that connection. Now this, I teach a lot of times in places that don't have all the fancy stuff you have, and so I use a whiteboard. So I took this is actually a snapshot of a whiteboard, and I told the class, I said, most people are very interested in this end time stuff, heaven and the tribulation and all that, but that part that we're coming to right now, God designed it to be inside of two other packages. Chapter 1, God says, before you get into the tribulation and the mark of the beast and all that stuff that you're so interested in, and who the two witnesses are, and what the pit is, and what all those demons are doing, before you get into that and what we're going to do in heaven, you need to focus on the purpose of the book. Remember, this is the only book that the first verse gives the theme, and the theme is that Jesus Christ is revealed. Jesus is revealed as the Son of God. He is the image of God. He is the one that demonstrates all the attributes of God. In fact, all 25 of the systematic, theologically defined attributes of God are illustrated in Revelation. They're not illustrated in the other book of the Bible in one place. They're named all through the prophets, and the Psalms have them. But if you look at a systematic theology, normal one is like 1,200 pages long. If you look at one of those, all 25 of the attributes of God, you can find an example of them in Revelation. So it's showing Jesus is the image of God. Jesus reflects all the attributes of God. Jesus is the creator. He is the redeemer. He is the judge. So that's the kind of the outer case. Then inside of that, Jesus is right now primarily working with his church. Do you want to have significance in life? Do you want to do something meaningful? Work somehow attached to Christ's church. In fact, your body should be attached to a church. There should be a church you identify with. We are not supposed to be little islands. We were not designed to make it alone. When you go to college, it isn't the time that you stop going to, Sunday school and all that stuff. It's the most important time. In fact, I had a great talk with one dear student over here that's going off to a West Coast school, and I said, boy, if you're going to make it in that school, you should be attached to a local church. I didn't have the privilege of wealthy parents, and so I had to work every day of all my college years. And I went to college for a long time. And I had to work. I paid my way through, like probably, almost everybody does these days. It's expensive. And you know what the temptation was? Not to go to church, especially on Sunday night, because I had all my Monday morning classes to do. And for 8 years that I was in Bible college and seminary, I went to church on Sunday night. Not because I had to, not because I got credit for it. It's because God said, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together, like some people do. But assemble and exhort one another as you see the day approaching. See, the closer we get to the day, that's the return of Christ, that's the end of the world, the last days like Brandon was talking about, the closer we get to the day, the more vital we need to have a group of people around us that are saying, in fact, I'll tell you the story of what I did when I was a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor for several years, and I had 100 in my youth group down in the South. I youth pastored down in Georgia and South Carolina. And I made a deal with the kids. I said, every time I see you in this little town, and we're talking about southern towns are little towns. I said, every time I see you, I'm going to walk straight toward you, and I'm going to ask you one of 4 questions. What are you reading in the Bible? What are you meditating on from what you're reading in the Bible? In other words, what are you memorizing and meditating? What are you praying about? What are the current struggles you have in your life? And when is the last time you shared the gospel with anyone? 4 things. I showed them to you on that chart last hour. I never forget, I was walking on a sidewalk across town, and one of my students was in the sidewalk. And I started walking right toward him. Whoop, there they went. They went down a side alley. And I knew why. Either they hadn't read the Bible, they weren't memorizing anything, they weren't couldn't remember what they were praying about, and they certainly hadn't shared the gospel with anyone. And so I didn't, I just prayed for them, and I kept going through life. And later on that day, in the afternoon, I was somewhere else walking, and I saw that person. And so I, kind of walked a little bit. They came right toward me. And finally, they came right up to me, and I just smiled, and I kept walking. And they said, "Ask me." I said, "Ask you what?" And I said, "I saw you bug out, and I know." And I said, "Okay, I'll ask you." You see, people want to be accountable. And that's why we go to church. That's why we're a part of that assembly together. And so we are his church. And how Jesus wants us to live in an ever-darkening evil world is what this book is about. And that's why he gives us the map of the end. You have to understand Revelation. Christ, his church, all the rest. You know what most people want to know about? All the rest, instead of understanding Christ, understanding my part in his church, and all the rest.